Yar! This be the Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 ship's bells, the swords of Satoshi, the rotten bilge rats of the Bitcoin, the hardest treasure talk on the seven seas. We'd like to welcome our panelists, including Blake Anderson from Facebook.com got Blake.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me on.
Bryce Wiener from BlockTech Financial.
Pleasure to be on as always. Thank you.
Chris Ellis from @Mr. Chris Ellis.
Hello.
And I'm Mad Bitcoins. Here are today's topics. Issue 1. I'm probably not going to keep this pirate thing up the whole time. Falling apart. United Way becomes the largest non-profit to accept Bitcoin. The United Way, the largest privately held non-profit in the world, which raises more than $5 billion annually with more than 2.8 million volunteers and 9.7 million donors, now accepts Bitcoin. Also this week, the BitGive Foundation, friends of the show, received their 501c3 status from the IRS, making them the first Bitcoin charity to be so honored by the IRS. Is charity the killer app of Bitcoin? Blake Anderson.
Well, I really dislike charity. I think that everybody should keep all their money, and everybody with less money is, that they should be, subjugated and work for the like top classes at the pyramid. Like the eye at the top needs to look down at all the lesser people and then subjugate them, because that's just how money works. No, it's great to see charity getting involved with Bitcoin. I think there's a lot of potential for decreased remittance fees. So like when you send money overseas to different countries and stuff like that, it's less expensive with Bitcoin. Hopefully the charities can get more of their money going towards actual helping of people and less towards overhead and security and bureaucracy and red tape and all that crap that kind of happens when you get a tax status sometimes that is charitable or nonprofit. You are doing good and using your ammo for good, but sometimes the overhead gets so high that not as much money goes to the people that you would want to help. So hopefully Bitcoin can help solve that problem.
Bryce Wiener, what say ye?
Yarr. Well, it's not always about piracy. Sometimes you do have to give back. And in fact, I am a full supporter of cryptocurrencies and charities. I think it is, in fact, one of the new killer apps. We're doing it. We're working with Nature.org, the Nature Conservancy, one of the largest in the world, to issue their own cryptocurrency for their own donation system. So obviously I support it. I'm actually going to do it. So.
Very cool. We need all the charity we can get. Chris Ellis.
Well, I've just come out of a forest. I know nothing about this story, this show, or this charity, but I think it's awesome. Most popular use case of Bitcoin after speculation is charitable giving, and I hope Sean's Outposts still continue to get the limelight. I hope this doesn't overshadow them, because they've probably been, the biggest kind of leader in this movement of all. So yeah, great news.
And remember, all the United Way has to do is put a QR code on the end of their advertisements, and they'll be making tons of money from new people.
Make sure you listen to him about the QR code. He's not kidding. He keeps going on about it. Just put a damn QR code everywhere.
It's important. Look at your screen right now. Look at my screen. Anyone could donate through these QR codes. Amazing, scannable Bitcoin technology. They're everywhere. And they shouldn't be web page links. I'll tell you again. Exit question. What's your favorite Bitcoin charity? Blake Anderson. Disappeared. Bryce, what's your...
No, I'm back here. I'm just
back?
Getting all excited because I'm going to steal Sean's Outpost first, and so nobody else can say that. It's my favorite charity. It can't be your favorite charity, so you all better think really hard about a different charity, not Sean's Outpost with my homeboy Jason King, because that's my favorite charity, so it can't be yours. It's my intellectual property, and if you say it, I'm going to see your ass in decentralized court, and you are going to lose.
I have prior art. I already mentioned Sean's Outpost, so I have prior art.
Oh,
damn it!
Bryce, would you also like to go with Sean's Outpost?
No. One of the coin networks that I help steward, Razor, actually donated a large sum to Team Tarhay, which is a nonprofit organization run by MMA fighter Danny Plyler. And they just had their grand opening this week. and there was a bunch of folks there, and I agreed to fight someone for charity. He's going to train me over the next 6 months, and then I'm going to step into the ring and get my ass kicked for charity.
That is a bad deal. I've seen those MMA fights. It ends on the ground, like yeah.
But I will have an actual real amateur record when it's over. So even if it's 0-1, that's still something I can tell the kids about.
Still in at bat. And Chris, you're sticking with Sean's Outpost?
No, actually, I'm going to go with the Richard Reeves Foundation, which is a charitable foundation in the UK which owns property in central London that we have now commandeered called the Bitcoin Squat. They've been sitting on this thing, leaving it empty for 3 years. Rumour has it they're trying to let it degrade so that, you know, they've got an excuse to knock it down. There was actually a press release back in 2009 they did saying that they were going to sell it to property developers. It never happened. And so what they seem to be doing is they seem to be making charitable donations to other charities as a kind of a reason for being a charity. But then they're holding all these assets, about 23 million net assets. But no one's really sure like why they exist. This feels like, well, they're just speculating on the market. They're propping up a property boom, which is then, you know, making people homeless and so on because they can't afford to live, and then they're giving that money to charity. I just don't think that
you should be their new PR guy.
I'm not a big fan of charity, and that's why, because everyone should just be decent to one another. Like, I don't see why you need these centralized marketing companies that then end up becoming these centralized systems for all that money. The problem is that the accounting rules in the UK are such that you can kind of obscure a lot of your activities on the front end when it gets published, so you're not really sure what's been going on behind the scenes. I don't, by the way, I'm not making any allegations explicitly about the Richard Reeves Foundation. I don't know what they're doing. I'm not implying that anyone's siphoning off money or anything. I'm just saying that based on what we know, this is no way to run a charity.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Steve Hughes. He's a comic, and he talks about, you know, don't give your money to people less fortunate than yourselves. Just, you know, go to a registered charity, give it to us, and we'll make sure they get it. I think it's just really, really funny.
That's exactly.
That's a good point, Chris. Charity shouldn't just come at tax time. We should do charity all the time. My favorite is BitGive because Connie's super cool. And she's in Europe right now, so she might not see this till later. So, hi, Connie. And we're moving on to issue 2. Issue 2. Boston Fed sees Bitcoin flaws, but cryptocurrency has potential. The Boston branch of the Federal Reserve, a privately controlled central bank that owns the currency of the United States, released a report on Bitcoin this week claiming that while the new digital currency could reduce online shopping costs, it won't have any lasting effects. Seems a bit contradictory. Is the Fed speaking out of both sides of their mouth? Maybe they just can't see the sky through the bars of their cage. Bryce Wiener.
I think there's some legitimate concerns in regards to cryptocurrencies, but I think the Fed is, and always has, quite frankly, taken a very educated approach towards Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. They could have absolutely, when first, Congress asked the Fed, Ms. Yellen for her opinion, and her opinion was we have no opinion. It's not under our authority. And that right there, that very statement was just tremendous. I mean, the Federal Reserve has no authority over Bitcoin, therefore the U.S. government has no authority over Bitcoin. So when does the IRS come into play? When any of these federal agencies come into play is actually when you convert a cryptocurrency into fiat. And the rule is render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. So as long as you stay inside cryptocurrency and all the business you do is done in cryptocurrency, there's not really anything for anyone to tax.
Very true. Chris Ellis.
I don't know, I've just come out of a forest, I don't know anything about this news story or this show. But I do think it's very interesting. Peter Todd mentioned the other day that it was interesting that the only countries that banned Bitcoin were on developing countries, not Western democracies. And we do seem to be getting all these kind of contradictions. We had the Bank of England making very positive statements about Bitcoin. They actually thought that eventually this technology would probably just supersede and replace the existing financial network. I don't think they know what to do. These institutions tend to bumble around. They're very slow. They rely on all kinds of committees. And of course, unlike a blockchain, they don't have anything like the kind of efficient consensus self-stabilization effects that we've been seeing from the blockchain itself.
Although, according to Russia, the two countries that banned Bitcoin, Bolivia and Ecuador, are in Europe, according to Russia. Blake Anderson.
Yeah, I mean, there's some serious issues with cryptocurrency and not with any of the legacy systems. I mean, like the US dollar is probably worth somewhere around negative $120 trillion, but there's problems with Bitcoin, so we need to look at the transcension of elemental limitations on fault tolerance. That's a big problem. We can't have an immutable ledger that actually tells us what happened through financial history. That's a really big problem. So I think that Bitcoin, of course, isn't perfect, but for them to be like, oh, let's come in here and say what are the problems with the new system without talking about some of the hyper massive red flag problems that are going on in the legacy system is kind of hilarious, for lack of a better word.
Exit question. Given that the dollar has lost 80% of its value since 1920, and the Federal Reserve has failed to eliminate the boom and bust cycle of American economics as they promised, is the Federal Reserve a successful system? Bryce Wiener.
I think the one thing that folks are going to start becoming wise to, and I've had a lot of these conversations with some credit card folks and some bank folks recently, and it was in the sense that there was always the subsumed cost of processing fiat transactions as a part of the economic system because there was no alternative to which to compare it. And now we can actually compare the cost of computing fiat transactions for interest, I got to tell you, the computations on the amount of interest I get in my checking account is a hell of a lot more complex than proof of stake. So that level of cost savings, even in the very clock cycles required to compute the very things needed for those currencies, cryptocurrencies simply just outclass them head and shoulders. And I think that eventually is where we're going to start to win the argument overall, that it is simply more cost effective to have a blockchain and deal with everything being auditable and accountable in a public transactional ledger in order to be able to really, in fact, save fiat economics from itself.
And of course, the last time we made any economic decision about our money, it was Christmas Eve, like 1913 or something. So it's been a long time. There wasn't even any computers then. It seems like kind of a lot's changed. Chris Ellis.
Yeah, I think they should be careful about throwing stones, shouldn't they? No, I'm not a big fan. I can't add anything else to what the other guys have said.
Blake Anderson.
Well, I mean, it's just, the Department of Energy is going to get the United States, we're not going to be dependent on foreign energy, and then our dependence, skyrockets. And then we're going to have the war on drugs, and then drug use skyrockets. Let's have like a war on freedom and see if we can actually, use some of this, opposite day kind of reasoning to get some real freedom. It's just the untenability, like the indefensible nature of the legacy financial system in comparison with an immutable ledger that cannot be changed or manipulated. It's just hysterical. It's comical. And now finally, like, we're going to finally audit the Fed. It's like it's way too late for those kind of half measures. It's kind of funny to me.
And of course, they already started a war on freedom when they passed the USA Patriot Act, which of course you all remember stands for Uniting and Strengthening America by providing appropriate tools to respond to and interdict Terrorism Act of 2001. Moving on. It's all happening at the World Crypto Network. Daily YouTube shows about Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. The only thing missing is you. Get involved. Make your own show or help out behind the scenes. Learn more at worldcryptonetwork.com. Issue 3. Will Bitcoin fall, then bounce? Obviously, the price of Bitcoin has been going down lately. Technical analysis says the market is oversold and we may be reaching the bottom of this long downtrend. Others have speculated that a strong dollar, the Alibaba IPO, and banking troubles in the Isle of Man may have led to Bitcoin's decline. Chris Ellis, what are your thoughts?
Well, you know how I don't like to say "I told you so," right? I don't like to say "I told you so," so I'm not. I'm just going to show you this tweet from someone else who said that I called it. And I did call it, and largely because it was not sustainable that you had all these people over-investing for emotional purposes in this brave new world, apparently, that we were going to go into. It was going to solve all the world's problems. And I'm slightly guilty of that too, so I'm sort of saying this tongue-in-cheek. But it just wasn't sustainable for us all to live off our savings all this time. And I spoke to numerous people who were just saying to me, I need to eat, I need to eat, and eventually they had to capitulate. And I don't think that's what triggered this big price drop. Actually, I'm a big fan of Bitcoin markets over on the Reddit. And I suggest you check this out. Somebody here is very, very bearish, and I have to kind of agree with a lot of his sentiment, which is that pretty much everyone has to sell because there just isn't enough demand. The merchants have to sell as soon as they get it. The miners have to sell because they can't pay for the electricity, and the fact is there just isn't the buy support that there was in the hundreds range when we were down there. Now, that doesn't mean that I think that the price is going to go down to 100, which is what a lot of people seem to be saying on the forums at the moment if you head over to here. But yeah, I do think that it does have some serious implications for Bitcoin, because we do need our currency to be taken seriously if we are going to get any of those lofty ideals that we talked about earlier on.
Blake Anderson.
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of people forget that until, Bitcoin is produced at a deflationary rate of progress until 2140, when the 21 millionth Bitcoin is produced. And what does that actually mean? A deflationary rate of production does not mean, and cannot be conflated with deflationary period, with being destroyed and things like that. What deflationary means is, like, let's say you have the price of Bitcoin going up and the price of goods and services going down relative to the purchasing power of Bitcoin. And that is engendered when the hashing power is going up at a certain rate and then the price is going up at a certain rate. But when the hashing power continues to go up at an almost exponential rate and the price begins to go down, then that turns that system on its head, and then there's about 1.5, I think, million dollars worth of Bitcoins that is going into these different mining pools that are having to liquidate because they cannot pay for electricity. And let's say that you have like Cointerra hashing equipment that's going at 1.6 or 1,600 gigahashes, and you have a 50-50 mining contract deal where you get 800 hash and then somebody else gets 800, and then you're going to use, half of it for their payouts, and then half is going to be for you to pay for power costs and stuff like that. I don't think that that's profitable until that the price of Bitcoin is around 515, and so since it's well beneath that, people are having to liquidate and go into debt. And you could maybe, shoulder that for a long time period if you have the investment horizon appropriate to get through that time. But people have way, way, way unrealistic investment horizons, which means the amount of time that you have your money borrowed from is way, way, way too short. And then they have to end up going into a loss to pay for the coins that they're making in different things, and then they try to use savings. And what this does is it creates a lot of excess supply of Bitcoin on the various different markets, and then the supply goes up, demand goes down, and then people have to sell more, and more Bitcoin has to chase after the same things, and then you get a giant, running issue. So what we need to kind of do is to try to get the hash rate and the price to hit an equilibrium where it is matching with the amount of demand that we have for Bitcoin right now. Because if we continue to just act like, the ends will justify the means, and we can be like Rome until the soldiers cross the Rubicon because they haven't been paid and kill everybody, that's probably not going to go well. So I would say that there's a real danger of leaving the deflationary engenderment of an increase in Bitcoin price to the four factors that are original without creating another fifth factor to engender that, which nobody seems to be working on. Everybody's just like, we're just going to sit and wait for, some giant hero of the day, giant whale investor to come in and dump all this stuff, and that's irresponsible.
Well, that was incredibly technical. Bryce Wiener.
From more of a trading perspective, last night was really interesting. There was a lot of action as shorts closed on Bitfinex. which kept the price popped up, but eventually those all petered out, and back below 400 again it fell. And it was almost like poetic in a sense. There was all this frenetic action, and there was a flash crash in May 6th of 2010 of the S&P 500, and this is kind of what it sounded like, right?
Here now, once again, we are trading 1100 even. Guys, we are 64 handles lower on the day here now, guys. Not.
That's like what it was like last night in the Bitcoin markets. It was insane. And then there was millions of dollars being moved through the blockchain, and a lot of it showed up on Bitstamp. And then for just 1 second, for just one moment, for one block, there was no transactions at all. The Bitcoin network literally just held its breath for one block. It was amazing. I have never seen anything like that before in all of the years that I've been participating in this. It was absolutely just a unique moment last night. And I think there's a lot of uncertainty right now, obviously, as to why the price is so low. And, in my estimation, the Alibaba thing is just total nonsense. Even the article that was published on Bitcoin Magazine, I completely ripped it apart today. They said BTC China was the #1 volume exchange, which is ridiculous. It is far and away OKCoin. And Huobi is even above that. So, honestly, you have to take into account some of the sources, and please, by all means, check your facts. Even because if it comes from a Bitcoin Magazine article or a CoinDesk article, that doesn't mean they're correct. If somebody says something, please double check it, especially when it comes to where you're thinking about putting your money. That's really important. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of places that we can turn in order to get that information. So, the rule of the day is always DYOR, do your own research. If I had to call a price, I think we're going to see 360 or 350 before this is over.
Exit question. How low will it go? Bryce says 350, 360. Chris?
I don't know. I can't predict the future any better than anyone else, and I always say it. I mean, all I can really do, like I have been, is just comment on what I'm hearing and seeing right in front of me. And so that's what I will continue to do.
Blake?
The price will go as low as you as an individual watching this broadcast will allow it to go by continuing to do irresponsible things and or by not taking it upon yourself to try to develop solutions to what's going on. So, I mean, look inside of yourself and say, how low am I going to let it go?
I think we'll develop those solutions. Maybe I'll go buy some stuff on Amazon with gift. That sounds fun. Moving on, issue 4. Tim Draper, Bitcoin's price still headed to $10,000 a coin. This quote may only be 7 days old, but one of the largest Bitcoin holders, the winner of the Silk Road auction, sees the market very differently than today's depressed price. Tim Draper, noted venture capitalist, disagrees with the current market. He says he sees an entire economy being rebuilt. He has a price target of $10,000 in 3 years. And he says even that may be pessimistic. Is there no reason to fear? Is this really the mother of all buying opportunities? Blake Anderson.
This depends on the continued development of Bitcoin and technologies which work with Bitcoin, and not having everybody with the technical wherewithal coming in and trying to make their own pump and dump operation and wasting everybody's time. So it definitely could happen, but I don't think that anybody for a second should should kick back and wait for it to happen. If you are invested in the future in which we're going to have some economic freedom, like, learn the things that you have to learn, get motivated, talk to people. Do not sit back and just be like, oh, poor me, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to have to wait longer now. Do something about it.
It's true, we can make this happen. Bryce Wiener.
Well, I think it might have even been on this show. I called a $10,000 price on Bitcoin in 2 years before Mr. Draper did. So, I mean, I am quite obviously in agreement with his opinion. And for some of the silly and inaccurate things that Mr. Draper said about Bitcoin, this time I think he's actually got it right.
It's often that people can't see the market, and other people's analysis is correct. It just takes time. We just have to wait this thing out. Chris Ellis.
I've never been a fan of these psychological price targets. that ends up manipulating the market. I think one of the first people to do this was Max Kaiser. I think he received a lot of Bitcoins, and then he started going on his whole kind of Satoshi cybercrist. What will happen if 5% of all gold investment diversifies into Bitcoin? It will get to $1 million a Bitcoin. But before then, it will be, what was it, $500,000 a Bitcoin. Before that, it would be $10,000 a Bitcoin. I remember this kind of, what this does is it psychologically charges you. It's called anchor and adjustment in psychology. If I say to you, 20, and then 5 minutes later I say, what is the population of Nigeria? You are statistically more likely to say something with 20 in it just because I primed you beforehand. It's
20 million people.
Arbitrary. It's entirely arbitrary, and you're being manipulated. And I think that we need to promote Bitcoin for its values. That's not to say that the price isn't important. It's just that the price is historical. When you see it, so can everyone else. It's already happened.
Well, hold on a second. Now, at that point, I'm going to have to say, hey, now. Because we do know the price is historical. You're absolutely right. And I posted last night to my Twitter feed historical price on September 19th for the last 4 years, since 2010 when Mt. Gox started trading. And also related that to the difficulty, so there's some basis of comparison there. And that, we all, everybody says, oh, Bitcoin, can take over all the wealth of the world. Well, when you have Goldman Sachs say that suitable price targets for BitTerm in the near term are 10,000, and in the midterm is 100,000, and the long term is 1 million. I mean, this was March of this year when the People's Bank of China was still doing its thing and beating the dog that is the Chinese Bitcoin markets, and we were having all kinds of stuff here with that senator from the southeast. When all this stuff eventually fell out, everybody kind of missed the fact that Goldman Sachs said Bitcoin could be worth $1 million someday. Goldman Sachs, but I don't understand how that refutes the point that the price is historical once you've seen it. The price on the exchange, once quoted, is not a historical figure. No, there's nothing out of line with a $10,000, $100,000, $1 million.
But don't you understand that you're influencing decisions by saying that? You're influencing decisions, and when people of high status start pumping out these psychological targets, it primes other people to make decisions in the future.
I don't discount that at all. And you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and say that's the world. That's everything. The whole world is essentially a pump and dump. If you want to look at it from that perspective, if you talk positive, if you talk about the altruistic positive aspects of something, you are still selling the virtues of that thing to your audience, and you want them to consider it in a new way. I don't think we can really escape that. What I believe, at least, I can't speak for Mr. Draper. What I am attempting to do is at least be pragmatic about it. I have a lot invested in this industry, and predictions are a part of it. And quite frankly, I am one of those people who staunchly maintains that the price of any cryptocurrency is a measure of the hope and fear that it will achieve its primary use case. And Bitcoin's use case is to change the world. So when someone like Goldman Sachs says that Bitcoin is going to reach $1 million, to my ears, that says that Goldman Sachs is on board with this.
It tells me they've already bought some, and they're using their status to try and get the price to go up, and that makes me feel that they're being dishonest. They're manipulating people's future expectations. They are manipulating people's expectations.
What's the difference between you doing that and Goldman Sachs?
I want to weigh in the middle.
Oh, he was going to weigh in the middle. We were about to get like a really...
No. I want to weigh in.
Yeah, go. YouTube for the win.
Internet in Minnesota. Internet.
He's been intercepted by the NSA.
This was just getting so good that Blake had to get interrupted in the middle.
Can you hear it now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you have no neck.
Right. It's I think you're right. Even it. You know what I mean?
Try semaphore. You got some flags or something? Maybe some sign language. All right, well, let's just, this is contentious. Let's just move on to our exciting exit question, which is, of course, next week's Bitcoin price. So, obviously, Chris isn't going to go for it, so we're going to go to Bryce. Any predictions for next week?
For next week, in Bitcoin price, just want to make sure I'm. Oh yeah, I think if we haven't hit 350 yet, we're going to. I think that's a solid floor. That's at the point where miners. Where the economics specific to Bitcoin start to kick in, and I think that because at that point even small mining operations are no longer profitable. They're actually underwater, and that is de facto introduction of debt into the system. When Bitcoin is when you can't even pay for the electricity, you're coming out of it from other means. So I am expecting a rather vicious rebound at some point when people are simply tired of having to come out of pocket. I mean, I don't think they're going to turn their miners off, but I think we're going to see a vicious rebound in the price. I mean, and when I say vicious, I mean up to 2,000 and maybe back down to 800, 700, 500 again.
Well, that would be nice. Blake Anderson, you're back. Do you still want to try to insert yourself into the middle of this argument? It worked so well last time.
Yeah, I wanna get in the middle of this and then have Goldman Sachs cut off my internet connection again. So basically, Goldman Sachs, yeah, they're going to manipulate like what Chris was saying, but on Bryce's side, they wouldn't have put the material investment into Bitcoin if they didn't think that they could either manipulate it or because they thought that it was worth it. And we don't know what percentage of what is which, but we have to know that there could be a gradient of what is their interest in manipulating it and how much are they going to hold long term because they really have seen the math and they can see that it's a deflationary rate of production to 2140 with the 21 millionth coin, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to be lost. People that hold Bitcoin or have private keys die all the time, and lots of it gets destroyed or proof of burn and all that kind of stuff. So Goldman Sachs is not, maybe we don't want to champion them as like a moral knight, but I mean I don't think they're stupid. So.
Very good.
Well, and just to respond to him for 1 second, there's also one other thing that's really important about those numbers from Goldman Sachs from earlier this year. At about $60,000 a Bitcoin, Bitcoin will completely encompass the M0 monetary supply of the United States. That's all of the paper money in circulation as well as all the money in banking and checking accounts. At $60,000, I call that the Rubicon point. Because after that, there's no turning back, because Bitcoin is as large as the United States economy.
We better fix the code before we get to that point. Moving on to questions and answers. Our first question is from our friend, the Dread Pirate Theo. Theo says, at what point BT miners to turn off the miners and the difficulty will drop? Is the current price an argument against proof of work in favor of proof of stake? Blake Anderson.
No, I don't think it's an argument against proof of work in favor of proof of stake. I think that people that are running mining operations that are improperly cooled and have to pay through the nose for a bad cooling setup, and they're liquidating all of their energy costs to, not even be able to almost make any money. I mean, that's not good. I mean, as Bryce had the price point of, smaller operations, and I had the price point of larger operations at about 515. If you have let's say you have 70,000 BTU of cooling power and you have 7 1.6 terahash machines. If the price isn't at around 515, you're going to lose money running that at a 50-50 split with your mining contract. So there's a lot of stuff that comes into play as far as which people that are running which hardware are going to lose money, but I don't think that this is an argument against proof of work. Proof of work for me right now is the most tenable system to run a cryptocurrency long term upon.
And remember, the big problem with proof of stake is it's just plain up it's creepy. You have to keep all of your coins online where they can be easily stolen so that you can stake them. That's just creepy. I don't want to do that. We've also got a comment from Nick. Nick says, today is Talk Like a Pirate Day. Yar! September 19th every year. Yar! It's an internet holiday that Chris has never heard of before. It's populated by Dave Barry in his column from Florida. Yarr.
And Falkvinge in Europe.
Yes. We've got Sumutra, sorry about the pronunciation, from India. He's got a question for Bryce. He says, do you think we'll ever see P2P transactions in Bitcoin from merchants rather than via payment processors?
I think that's a definite possibility. You know, I actually do them myself as a part of doing business. So I think that's, I mean, and I'm talking like commercial remittance. I, you know, have an interest in a coffee house, and we accept Bitcoin there. And that is done purely, you know, with cell phones and iPads. So I don't, you know, I think that it's a matter of becoming comfortable with the technology, and that remittance processors are like training wheels. And eventually, you're going to throw off your training wheels because there's just a cost savings in there. And BitPay, you know, bless their hearts, they're going to great lengths to not be cost impactful on their merchants because, you know, I think they found out first that as soon as merchants figure out what Bitcoin is and how to use it, the first thing they do is dump their payment processor.
You can do pretty much the same thing with the blockchain wallet that you could do with any payment processor. It's
right.
Pretty much right there. Let's see. We've got a question from Chad. It's not written in pirate speak. I'll see if I can translate. Yar! Are we into Bitcoin because we want to make $1 million? Or are we into Bitcoin to make the world a better community? Or are both questions really just the same thing? Chris Ellis.
No, I think profit should be the result of getting things right. It shouldn't just come at like the expense of someone else, and there are different ways of achieving that. And I don't mind, I'm not averse to people getting rich, I just want the right people to get rich if possible. I think like since I've been hanging out at this squat in London, I've met a lot of homeless people, and it just I don't know, like I just get very emotional about it, but it's just this isn't justice. This is not what justice should be like. You shouldn't have this kind of elite property owning class that manipulate the market. The people within that industry have been messaging me privately to tell me that it's manipulated. We all know it's manipulated, and we all talk about it over champagne and we laugh it off. And it's just this kind of unconscious thing that they go through. But there are some people who, particularly in real estate in the UK, that's not what we call it here, we call them estate agents, but they are starting to realize that, you know, it's not pretty and it's not very nice. And now that we're becoming more connected, it's much harder to screw someone over when you look them in the eye. And I think that the internet now is making us realize just how small this global community is.
Good point. Blake?
I was going to jump in. I totally agree, and I think that the white paper, as written by Satoshi, says that the system ought to reward good behavior. So there should be, like, the more money you're able to make with Bitcoin, it should be because you're securing the block or because you're doing something that helps to engender price discovery or things like that. And if we look at the utility of Bitcoin as a token to go around and be commoditized in and of itself, that will push down the need of people to want to have IOU-based ownership of different other things to trade that will not have as much utility. And then we will want to actually have tokens that are backed by different things that are then traded to hopefully make it so that we can have less friction-oriented tokens that have more utility to go around and have people hoard those instead of hoarding resources that people need. So in a best-case scenario, it could really, really, really help the world.
Excellent. Moving on to the next question. Pirate Theo writes, in Nassau, I heard that if bit doubloons cost $10,000 a coin, then they will have 1% of the privateer Forex market. Not even sure if that's a question, might just be a comment. Let's go to the next one.
Arr.
Theo says, does NewBit have the same economic problems that BitShares X has with trying to be stable but building on a house of cards and possible liquidity issues? Yar! Anybody? NewBits and BitShares X? I'm not sure.
It's a sinking ship. I don't know how many times they're going to recycle this thing before they realize that they have completely ignored every economic rule in the universe of supply and demand and the transfer of wealth and where things derive their value. I mean, these are like really base kind of things. And you cannot just create these things and say, because crypto, and then suddenly they have value and utility. That is just absolute nonsense. And quite frankly, the fact that this project raised $5 million every day becomes more offensive, because it means there's $5 million worth of fools out there left in the Bitcoin community because they funded this with Bitcoin. And we know they did because the days destroyed went up when the thing went IPO. It is absolutely just unconscionable. And eventually enough fools will be parted from their money that we can actually go on, and real projects that actually do real things, that have real value for the unbanked, for the rest of the world, will actually get created and funded. Man.
I'm glad you're not holding anything back, Bryce. We've got another question from Nick. Nick says, user adoption is still stagnant. That's why I think it's low. That and all the weak hands have been shook out. So, good point by Nick. And again, user adoption is just as easy as you going to your local small business, asking them if they'd like to take Bitcoin, leaving behind a flyer, coming back a week later, asking them if they want to take Bitcoin, leave behind a flyer, talk to the manager. You know, get a business card. Get one of those BitPay referral numbers I hear so much about. You can create Bitcoin adoption in your own town. Even if you have friends or family members that own a business, that's another good way to go.
Can I just come in here? Yesterday I went to a shop and I was wearing the Bitcoin Not Bombs t-shirt, and the guy behind the counter was like asking me about it, and I offered to pay. It was a chain store, so there was no way they were going to accept it. But he seemed like, yeah, he's like, yeah, I know what it is. Like, he seemed pretty happy about it. Other than that, though, most of the time when I speak to new people that are outside of the Bitcoin sphere, when I tell them about it, the look on their face is kind of like, don't do the pitch, don't give me the pitch, I've heard it before, I don't need the pitch. And they kind of get worried that I'm just going to start preachy, and I sort of notice that, and so I just pull away, and I don't take up any of their time. But I think Eric Benz did an interview on Russia Today. He's a Bitcoiner here in the UK, and he's a member of the London Bitcoin Group. London Meetup Group even. And he said that a lot of people just don't want to have to think about this, that it's kind of taxing on their mind, that they don't want to have to worry about where to put their money, that it's changing your bank account is traumatic enough, switching to a whole other currency, and when do you do it, and when do you get in, and they know that there are sharks out there that are like trying to, you know, manipulate the message, so they're not sure like who they should listen to. So maybe that's something we should work on next.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of parlay what you were saying. Like, I agree that there's a lot of people that don't want to think, they don't want to care, they don't want to be invested. There's so many people that have such a lack of will, and the kind of brutal, honest truth is that freedom doesn't work when nobody cares. For every 2 parts apathy, you get 1 part despair. And like, the people that don't take it upon themselves to look at the financial freedom and future of the world, it's really a tragic thing, because if you don't care, that's not the path to a good future. Kind of like, echoing what I was saying before about, it's up to you to decide how much adoption goes out, how much, development happens and all that stuff. And I don't know how to get people that watch an average of 5 hours of TV a day to care, but I think it's a really big issue.
That's a good observation. How do you get people who watch 5 hours of television a day to care about life instead of like their firmware upgrades as they watch the TV?
Probably got to be on television first.
Mm.
And
I'll get on TV.
I'll just say again my favorite quote from the GNN Countdown video, which is one of my favorite videos, where Ralph Nader says, "The lesson of history is, if you're not turned on to politics, politics will turn on you." So, too bad to all those people that don't want to learn things. Got another great comment from Nick. Nick says, "Don't forget that BitGive raised $11,000 for the water project to build wells in Africa." So BitGive is absolutely doing good work. You can see the money go from them to the water project, to the well, to the people who need water, and that's good charity. Let's see what else we've got. Sumitra writes, "What's the history of Talk Like a Pirate Day?" Well, as I alluded to earlier, it was a column written by Dave Barry, who's like a humorist who writes little short newspaper columns. And it was kind of a joke, and the internet started to pick it up, and people would just chat in chat rooms. You say "yar" after everything on this day, but much like April Fool's Day, it started to get bigger and bigger. A few years ago, Facebook offered an option in the language, and it's still there. You can go change it now on your Facebook page. Instead of English, you can take English pirate. and it'll change all the likes into Captain's checking out your bilge rats, and they do the whole thing. They've really changed their whole site. They definitely spent a bunch of hours on this, and as I'm sure you saw today, Sumitra, Reddit went all talk like a pirate, and that was every single Reddit. That wasn't a choice. That was like, we're doing this thing. So I think it's great. I hope it grows. April Fool's Day has gotten a little big. This one's still a little smaller. We can just enjoy it on our own. So it's a fun day. We've got a great comment here from Brandon. Brandon says, I got mine, and fuck you, Blake Anderson. So you're famous, Blake.
Oh yeah, with the don't donate to charity. I've got mine. I'm the Eye of Sauron at the top of the tower, and fuck everybody else. Yay!
They should put that under the pyramid. That's pretty good. Like, I got mine. Fuck you, the government. So, got a lot more questions here. Let's see. That doesn't make any sense to me. Let's see. Sumitra writes, how do you explain to consumers without enough money that Bitcoin is not about making money, but about freedom? Well, I mean,
that's good. That's good framing. That's good framing of the question.
I mean, part of what I would say is don't try to convince everyone on the first try. Let's stop shooting for the fences on this Bitcoin thing. Let's just be more like mentioning it casually.
Well, hang on, don't try and convince them at all. Stop trying to make other people believe what you believe, and just.
Oh my gosh! Thank you so much. Forget the word adoption. You're not trying to convert someone to a financial religion. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. You were on a roll. I was just wanted to agree with you.
Yeah, sure.
I pontificate at people for an average of 4 hours the first time they've heard of it, and I really go for all of the philosophy first until they're in a coma, and then I start to talk about the economic benefit.
Well, one thing is for sure that Bitcoiners certainly are tireless and determined. So I want to say thank you to Sumitra, who must come on the show sometime just so that we can pronounce his name properly. But yeah, he sent me this link earlier on to Zen Habits, which is one of my favorite places to go on the internet. And one of the things that it kind of says is that if you start to create an image you think that the customer wants, so that they buy what you're selling, that you're now a marketer, a manipulator, you're untrustworthy. And basically, this article states that a lot of this manipulation comes from a lack of confidence in these business owners themselves, and that's why they resort to manipulation techniques. That's why they do all the SEO and they try to drive traffic, get the engagement. Got to get the engagement. And they use all these kind of bullshit technical terms. They refer to things as content rather than pictures and music and interviews. And they just talk about it in very, very theoretical ways because they're just there to put money in one end and get more money out the other end. They don't really care about the people. And like I said earlier, in a more interconnected world, that's going to get harder and harder to do. So I think that Sumitra is right on, like in his observations and the couching of his question.
Excellent. And we've still got some more questions. They're all from Theo. He says, why all the worry? We be above the bit doubloons price lows in April 15th, 16th, which was a day a close of 364. Lower crashes, higher pumps? Maybe.
Didn't Nick say on Twitter that it would have to get to $60 in order to mirror the $32 crash that we had the first time? One of the bigger...
The percentages have been higher, and this is now a market without Mt. Gox. So that is something nice. If we come back, it'll be presumably authentic. Yeah.
Well, volatility is a day trader's best friend, but I think that we also have, we have various different exchanges where the order books are very thin and there's a lot of bot trading going on, and that's hard to sometimes keep track of because in traditional methods of finance or whatever, you maybe had a little bit more know your consumer and stuff like that, and you could see who was trading with who and blah, 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 and if there was anything that was super thin going on, it was maybe a little bit more apparent than when you have various different key addresses and stuff in the Bitcoin blockchain that are trading back and forth among themselves. You don't know who owns which wallet. So I wouldn't say that the bot trade spike false volume is not going to happen again, but at least we'll be looking for it this time. So again, with the dumping it to be incumbent on you, everybody look for that and continue to record and talk about it so that it doesn't happen. Because if we just expect that it won't because Gox is gone, I don't know if that's a good idea. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Theo also asks, do you think that off the chain brokers be dumping on the exchanges? Do you think that BitPay and other companies would really trust exchanges with blocks of 200 bit doubloons? Wind be blowing.
We know they do. We can see it in the blockchain. We saw it last night, and it was to the favorite whale standby Bitstamp. So I mean, we know. I mean, there's really no question. We know it happens, and they dug up all. I mean, it was like, gosh, I think someone said last night it was something like 300,000 Bitcoin days destroyed last night in one block. Nah, this is like whale panic. I mean, this was nuts last night.
Very crazy. We've got a question from Rand. He says, was Mt. Gox responsible for inflated highs? We don't know for sure. There was the Willie report, which said that two bots, Willie and Marcus, were trading inside of Mt. Gox, perhaps causing the price to rise. No one really knows 100%.
We don't know to what extent. I mean, because it's like, are you going to get names and dates and birthdays and find out? I mean, no, you've got a key, and then you've got key pairs, and then you've got, you know, various ways of going back and be like, well, this account and then this account, but who owns each account? Does one person own both? Do two people own, like, it would be very impossible to incontrovertibly prove, but there's, you know, we are pretty sure that it was happening. To what extent, it's almost unprovable. So it's kind of an area of gray, I guess.
It does seem like they were always leading the price before. There was definitely some kind of strange upward pressure coming out of there. And that may be because they were hacked and they needed to raise the price to get their money back, or they needed to raise more fees, cause more trading. There's a lot of speculation because it's a black box. We don't know what happened inside there. We do have the leak database, which is where they did the report from, the Willie report. And I don't know, Carpellis doesn't seem to be talking. We've got a question from Johnny. Johnny writes, the Fed seems to be eyeballing Ripple. Do you guys recommend diversifying a little into it? I don't know about that.
Ripple is and everybody hates it. And in fact, one of the people that founded it hates it so bad, he made a big deal about dumping all of his Ripple on the market, took those profits, forked it, and launched a competitor. So I'm wondering by what measure anyone thinks this is a good investment. I mean, like anyone. Like, I would like go to Jim Cramer and ask him, hey, would you buy Ripple with all this? And I think Jim would be like, you know, with the horn. No.
Got to get one of those buttons.
Right?
I think this is going to be the last question or comment for today from Chad. He says, when Blake isn't disrupted by the NSA, he's a cryptographic talking machine. That's pretty good. And Sumutra thanks us for answering the questions. And we're going to move on to predictions or story of the week. Blake Anderson, are you ready with a prediction or a story of the week?
Again, I guess I'm just going to have to rechannel my emotions from earlier, which, you know, my prediction is that the space is going to lack development and growth for as long as the people that are invested in it emotionally, mentally, and materially, financially allow for it to happen. If you are emotionally invested in blockchain technology because you can believe it will save the world, then, you know, go out and tell people that. If you are financially invested in it and you want to figure out what's happening, learn more about, you know, economics, Austrian economics, crypto economics, and go do that. Whatever niche area that you have a passion for in the crypto space, it's up to you to go out there and to help it succeed. Everybody's sitting back and being like, well, how long are we going to have to wait for this or that? It's very irresponsible. So please don't be that person.
Bryce Wiener. Still.
Okay. All right. Here's my prediction. My prediction is Nautilus coin will be released soon with proof of stake. No, just kidding. I had to say that at least once, otherwise someone was going to shoot me. Story of the week. You know, this Bitcoin price action is, I think, probably the biggest story in crypto right now. It is an utter collapse of any remaining bubble to prices so low compared to the difficulty that it is completely unprofitable to mine Bitcoin and will in fact put you in debt if it goes much lower. So I mean that to me that's big deal. So I want it to go lower. Quite frankly, I would like to see it be squeezed all the way out until it hurts.
Well, it's getting there. Chris, your prediction or story of the week?
My prediction is people will keep making predictions and they'll still not be true because no one can predict the future. But anyway, I want to talk about Runnymede and the site of where the Magna Carta was written. This is Vinny, and I met Vinny and the people down there in Surrey to see what they were making. They were building an eco-village in the middle of this forest. It's like 70 acres of unused land. I believe it's owned by the Royal Estate, but I'm not entirely sure. And at the moment, the people that own it, they have some security around some of these old buildings. I'll just take you through some of the pictures today. And this is like the Magna Carta. This is Amir Tarki sort of looking at the code. He's not impressed. He doesn't like the if statements. He thinks mathematics is much, much better. And what I really like about this crew of people is they're just investing in one another. Like, they're actually building their own houses on this unused land. And the agreement they have with the security there is as long as they don't touch any of the existing structures on the property, they're free to just be there. Now, it's obviously an informal arrangement and therefore not very stable. But people have been there for like 2 or 3 years now. And they are actually building these stable structures and living off the land. And Vinny built his, built the water system. You can actually have a shower there. It's kind of very crude, and you probably wouldn't want to do it in the winter. But it's really, I was just really impressed that they were just investing in trust, like actually raising kids in the middle of this forest, which is kind of cool. And you're not too far away from civilization. You're maybe like a 20-minute walk from a town like that's nearby. So, and this is one of the old buildings. I went around and I had a look. But this place hasn't been used in a long time, and you kind of got this, I don't know, quite, I'm kind of caught, I wouldn't want to do this myself, but I'm quite caught up with the kind of the romance of it all. Do you know what I mean? I like this kind of back to base. I wouldn't want the whole human civilization to do this, but I think it's important that we don't forget where we come from, and that, that we do have these roots. And I have an enormous amount of respect for people. One of the most prominent things to come up in conversation was how good it was to be debt-free. And you didn't have to have that, overhanging. You didn't have to commute every day to work and have that stress and then go listen to someone else's voice instead of following your own path in life. That you could just chill out in the woods and live very, very frugally and cook for each other. And actually, rather than, what you're stacking here is you're stacking trust. You're not trying to stack a currency, you're not speculating on anything, you're just investing in one another. Like, there's a guy there, I didn't catch his name, but he's a brilliant builder, and he just builds shit for people. He just built someone a shower, and he builds, he digs a hole in the ground and you can get water out of it, and it's just very impressive. So I quite like it. And this is the Bitcoin squat we had. This is the Last Supper, and this is Arthur, who's kind of like the daddy. He's like looking after everyone. I mean, he wouldn't like me saying that. Don't tell him I said that. But he's really cool. Like, he just knows what he's doing. He's a real responsibility absorber. You know what I mean? He's one of these people, if he sees something he needs doing, he just gets on with it. He doesn't complain about it. He doesn't wait for someone else to do it first. And he just gets on with it. He just does it. And he's been looking around for some new places for us to go. What else? Oh yeah, that was me trying to upload the thing. I don't think there are any more pictures. Oh yeah, this was some more pictures. Oh yeah, and also I wanted to say that we've got another copy of the blockchain heading to Toronto. In fact, it's there by now. Julia Toransky, I gave her a copy of the blockchain, and it loaded up very, very quickly, actually. It only took her like 30 minutes, I think, once we'd located where she was storing her copy of the blockchain. So yeah, that's, I think we need to get more kind of distributed. This is Arthur doing some stuff. Oh yeah, and we also had a lot of press at the squat as well. This is Mike Butcher butchering Amir Tarki, and also the Viacoin guy in the background there, Drac, who's really cool. He didn't want to be on social media, and I was like, yeah, it's not going to happen, mate. You are definitely going to have your picture like everywhere. You can't hang around with Amir and have the BBC show up and not ever get your face out. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Drac, for doing that. But
Chris is a spook, basically.
Yeah, he's a spook. I mean, he was saying some interesting things. I've been posting my hashes, my proof of work into the Bitcoin blockchain. So when I do work, I make a SHA-1 hash, and then I put it in the Bitcoin blockchain to prove that work existed in that state at that time. I use Git for this as well. But Drac is actually working on Viacoin, which means that you can put a lot of this metadata into their blockchain instead of jamming up the Bitcoin blockchain, which I would prefer to do. I don't really want to jam up Bitcoin's blockchain. I would prefer to use a dedicated coin for that. So that's what he's working on. It sounded very interesting. Oh yeah, and this was one of my tweets of the week, right? Pour me coffee on Twitter. Had no idea that this was an option, that you can actually put politicians into dumpsters. So that's my thought for the week. We should all go around putting politicians into dumpsters. I had no idea that the ballot paper allowed for that.
See, just another option. And now, my prediction. Yar! I wish we could have Talk Like a Pirate Day twice a year. The price of Bitcoin be low, mateys. We've lost a paper fortune, but we've buried our treasure deep in the sand, and there it sits and waits. For our bit doubloons are strong, and our patience great. This be a great cryptocurrency, and as for our losses, we'll just have to plunder overtime to make up for them. To the 7 Seas! Up, we're out of time. Until next time, bye-bye.